Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. So BTS just announced that it's going to take a hiatus. They're not disbanding, they're not breaking up, but they will be doing things on their own. If you do see them, they might be doing their solo projects, or they might just be resting because, Jin was just saying that he spent 4 days just playing video games and hardly eating. But what does this really mean? And is there more to the story than they're telling? We're going to go over that. So let's go over first what was official. What did they say? And it was very interesting because it wasn't a press release. It was announced through their YouTube channel during their yearly thing that they call a festa, where they get together, they reflect on the year, and they eat and drink. And they called it a festa, but it's also in the form of haesik. And haesik in Korea is one of the most dreaded words if you are like an office worker. It basically means like it's a mandatory, but not necessarily. Now by law, it can't be mandatory, but traditionally in Korean work-life culture, when you're seeing all those office workers drink and eat together and pretend that they're having a good time, that was basically mandatory. And haesik is basically means like office event of eating. And this is a time traditionally where, because people can't really be themselves or like communicate like bluntly for fear of like pissing people off, you can still piss people off at the haesik, but because you're getting so drunk, it allows people to be a little bit more forthright. These days, I think people are being a little bit more communicative during work hours because they don't want to have to wait and get drunk in order to basically say what is on their mind to their coworkers. But in the BTS version, because there's not like the layers of management and you're not just having to sit there like, listening to an old man pontificate and all this kind of stuff, it's kind of cool. It's as if like the young people's table was just talking amongst themselves. And in their case, it was very interesting because this announcement came from them directly to the fans while they were reflecting on the struggles of being a BTS member. It really was quite frank, and they even said like, let's just pretend the cameras aren't here. And they really did go into kind of their personal thoughts and feelings about why this decision was made. They kind of eased into it. The whole thing's like an hour. I could put a link to it below, and I had to watch the whole thing. But really what RM even said, like, okay, what I was babbling on about for 30 minutes, Jungkook just said in like a few sentences. And on the surface, namely, what they were saying is that they needed a break to find themselves because they've been going nonstop for 9 years. Most of that time, they have been living together in the dorms. Which is basically like they'll rent an apartment, and when you start out, it's a tiny place. They're saying like the first or second one was like mosquito infested. They were vacuuming mosquitoes off the wall, and then eventually, if your group gets bigger and bigger, there's a bigger budget for nicer accommodations. And traditionally, the idols, they live together. Now, I think that was basically their kind of like tipping point. So they said that recently they started living apart and that it's actually drawn them closer together. They've been able to do things on their own to try to find themselves. And essentially it's because not being able to grow and develop as an individual person has really now kind of hit the breaking point, according to what they were saying. 9 years going on it nonstop, and they've felt that they weren't able to really even express their desire for wanting to take a break. Now, this is the thing that makes a little bit tough in the mind of people in Korea who have to work under a system where, and especially in the idol system where you have very sensitive fans, it was kind of heartbreaking to have multiple members say that they wouldn't even let themselves think that they deserved a break, to even think that they could even say that it was tough, because, you know, you get a lot of backlash, you know, people being like, oh my god, you're an idol, you have such a good life, and you get to see the world, and like, what are you complaining about? That backlash is so strong among the haters, and then even the fans who are just so hungry, they do not want an idol to stop going. And I think this has been the advantage that BTS has had in terms of being like I believe it's the longest running boy group or idol group, because I think they were able to navigate working together and acting as one organism, and not necessarily letting the strains of, you know, even they said that, you know, they fight as well, but not letting that strain come out and even ultimately destroy the group and the group chemistry and the dynamics. Yes, there are people and groups that, especially when they first started out, that were much more talented. And even throughout the process, groups that have come and gone, you could say that maybe they were more expected to be more successful. But I think BTS now, of course, like in terms of like their musical ability, dance, performance, fan service, the whole package of what it takes to be a Korean entertainer, they have fired on every engine, and they're probably best in class in terms of even skill. But I think in this case, it goes to show that skill alone does not make you as successful as BTS. You need the skill, but I think what they really did master was working together. And I think I've said this before, that I am more impressed with how well they stay together, and they can go through the ups and downs and all of the unfairness and ugliness of the Korean music scene and international music scene. It is tough. They basically, you know, you have to swallow your pride and move over things that aren't right and just keep it going. Most other groups, at some point, there will be one member that will basically like be like, hey, no, or like, you know, collapse from it, or as a group as a whole, they might just be like, no, this is not right, we're going to, you know, rebel. Also, it probably has to do with the owner and the founder of Big Hit, which is now HYBE, Pang PD. He was essentially a hire of JYP, and so he made a lot of hits for JYP. He even made like the group God. He made Rain or Bees, Bad Boy, and many others. So he was very experienced as a producer, and I think somehow like his influence, because he's kind of like a quiet, mysterious, stoic guy. We don't know exactly how he works his magic, but I think that is pretty much the secret sauce as well, was that like they really weren't kind of like expected to be like in the big leagues, because they weren't part of the whole, top 3 entertainment agencies, but, they do have the person who came out of one of the top 3 agencies running the show. And even in this interview or this heshik or this festa that they had, they were saying like they just focused on the music. They were there for the fun. And that is what the fans felt. And what RM was saying was that like we really need to go and mature as adults now that most of them are all nearing 30. They feel like they've been kind of stunted in their personal development because it's been on. They've only been able to be in the role that they are, because RM says like, yeah, we could keep going. I could just say like I could work another day as the leader of the group and the rapper who does English interviews and, just kind of keep going. But he's saying like while they're trying to write lyrics, nothing is coming out. Suga also said that, 7 or 8 years ago, he had problems with skill level, nothing would come out. Now that he has the skill, he says like the well has run dry. So what they are saying is that they're all kind of burned out right now, and they really need to find their own creative source individually. And even RM was saying like, wow, like when I'm writing lyrics, I'm kind of writing lyrics and I don't even know if this is the entire thoughts of the group, and that's kind of hindered him creatively because he doesn't want to kind of like ruffle those feathers. There was a lot of like scared of pissing off the fans kind of messages going on and saying, please understand, we need this time. V, Kim Taehyun of the group, he's just basically saying like, well, I think the fans would understand. 90% of the fans, I think, would go along with this and understand that we do need a break and a bit of time to finish our development, because when you really do see how when they debuted in 2013, they were so young, like 13 to 15 years old, and now they are trying to be adults, and I think they recognize that if they keep going, something kind of bad is gonna happen, because it's amazing that they've gone this far without being able to kind of sit, reflect, relax, and think of their own thoughts. And that's what they're saying. They want that quiet time to be able to really discover truly who they are as individuals. They all acknowledge that, wow, this is a group that is so special, and I wouldn't be nothing or not here today without that group. So they all understand and all recognize how precious this group is, and that's what they want to keep going. They want this group to keep going, but then they realize that it's a burnout situation. Totally a burnout situation. And they said that even like spending some time apart has made them realize how precious being together was. And so when they come back together, they have more energy and freshness to be able to be BTS. So after this YouTube video dropped, when the stock market opened today, my goodness, shares in Big Hit Entertainment, or HYBE, dropped almost 25%, erasing about like 1.5 to 1.7 billion dollars in the market cap. So that really shocked the market, because HYBE is still very dependent on BTS, even though they set up an American subsidiary, HYBE America, that acquired Ithaca Holdings, which is an umbrella group that manages artists like Justin Bieber and Ariana Grande, and that's headed by this music producer and manager named Scooter Braun, which we'll get to a little bit later because I think there's something. But let's go over their farewell video. Because they just released, I'm sure you guys have all seen it by now. It's yet to come, and they just went into a desert. I mean, this is how amazing these guys, they're so busy. When do they have the time to like go fly into a desert somewhere and film this whole music video and also do a live performance? You know, after they did the music video filming, and in the same location, they decided to do a live concert for their fans of that song. It's a beautiful song, and when it dropped a few days ago before this announcement, I was just, I didn't really see all of it, and I didn't realize, but now how much of it was a farewell song for the time being. Essentially, they're saying the best is yet to come, that, you guys please wait for us. But really, it was a nostalgic type of video where they mirrored images of their previous videos, and it was kind of like a look back into like how they felt it was much better in the past, but the best is yet to come. And in the Festa whole Heshik, RM was saying that up until Dynamite, it felt like they had kind of cohesion and control over the group. But especially with Permission to Dance and Butter, once the partnership happened with Scooter Braun, he said that, it started to get away from us, and he kind of felt like he didn't even know who BTS was. He said, of course, he was very grateful that international acclaim, let them send out their message to more people, because he's an artist who wants to use music to send a message. And he said that he was grateful to go to the White House, to the UN, and to bring the fans along for the entire experience, and was very grateful for that. But he said he started to feel like their identity was disappearing. They didn't know where the direction was, and it seems like all the other members were kind of in agreement with that. Things behind the scenes, there seems to be something going on. Yes, they're all saying that personally they want to find themselves, like I said, and recover from burnout. And I think that is true. On the other hand, we gotta read between the lines. Definitely read between the lines, because the bus came out in their first music video, and it's a school bus. And yes, maybe this is an American school bus that does happen to have emergency exits printed all over, but it was very prominent. And I took that as a sign that this is an emergency. This is their emergency exit from some situation. Sure, it could be an emergency exit from Burnout, but I kind of think that it might now let's move on to kind of where I'm trying to read between the lines, because wow, in the song lyrics and in the imagery from the video, it looks like they're running away from not running away as in being cowards, but strategically protecting themselves by removing themselves from a volatile situation. So BTS fans, I think you got to give BTS a little bit more credit for what they're doing, because I think they're playing a bit of palace politics right now, and they are strategically maneuvering themselves to protect themselves, to make sure that they don't get hurt and gobbled up. If you look at some of the lyrics, they say I'm still the same, it's a new chapter, I'm 13 years old again. And he says okay, they keep talking about the world's expectations, we ain't about it. Crowns, flowers, countless trophies, we ain't about it. The whole Grammy stuff, that while they were getting sucked into this kind of American music scene, I think this is where the final straw broke in terms of how much they can handle with the dysfunction, because we know the music industry is a tough place to be. There's a lot of weird demands on the artists, and I think a lot of the times you kind of grin and bear it because of the crowns and flowers and countless trophies, being told that you're the best. But they're saying we ain't about that lifestyle. We ain't about it. Dream and hope going forward, that's what they're all about. And they're saying it's back to square one after making one long turn. Where they turned to recently? The United States. Now, this is why I'm saying that this may be an issue that they're trying to protect themselves from, because when I first heard this announcement that HYBE was merging, or kind of officially though acquiring Scooter Braun's company, I was like, oh, people, please be careful of who you do business with, because we have seen already, right before this whole situation with BTS, Taylor Swift and Scooter Braun got into a huge public fight that usually doesn't go this public. You can look it up, but basically, to make the long story short, Scooter Braun's company acquired the company, the music label that Taylor Swift was under, and there was a conflict over the masters, basically meaning who has control over Taylor Swift's music. Now, on the whole, yes, there could be some conflicts about like the artist not having control over their music, but usually it is the record company or the management or basically some other business entity that owns the music copyrights and, manages all of that. But there was something a little extra shady because Taylor Swift was saying that, wow, all of my experiences with Scooter Braun, he is a manipulative, abusive, tyrannical liar, kind of like some of the people that we talk about here in Korea. And she also said that Scooter got his artists and people associated with the artists, like Justin Bieber and even Kanye, to come and attack her publicly and bully her. Now, Taylor Swift is not necessarily, she ain't like the most, sweetest Pollyanna girl in the world, but even if, and I kind of believe her, I believe that she really had to sustain a lot of abuse and manipulation and trickery. Just look up the whole 25-minute phone call that Kim Kardashian only released 3 minutes of to try to smear Taylor Swift. But then if you look at the full transcript, you could see that Taylor Swift was not lying when basically Kanye was saying that, oh, I told Taylor that I was going to use these lyrics in my song and she signed off on it. And no, he only told her like half of the lyrics. He didn't tell her about the part where he was gonna say like, oh, I'm gonna call you a B in, like a hoe in my song. And it was a whole gaslighting situation. Now, more than that, it seems like there's kind of a business conflict and a lot of like chicanery here, because it's way that from Scooter Braun's perspective, he says that Taylor Swift owed him $1 million. But from another report, it said that his company, now that he had acquired the company that had, managed her music, still owed her $7.2 million in royalties. And we all know that's a very familiar story here in Korea, not being paid by the people who's supposed to pay you. And funny enough, it seemed as if this basically came like very close to when HYBE said that they were going to acquire Scooter Braun's company for $1 billion. And Scooter Braun had just bought the rights to Taylor Swift's music, and then she announced, well, I'm going to re-record all my songs so that you can't get any royalties from it. And then he had sold it to another company. So it seems like as if, in this situation, I kind of feel, now this is totally like me, looking at it from a situation of like, where are these dominoes falling from and how does business work? I kind of feel like by now, HYBE feels a little bit betrayed by this so-called business deal, because they basically pumped $1 billion over to Scooter. And he probably needed the money to pay off, his acquisition, and I don't know what kind of deal he was doing, and then all the other artists who probably owed money from him. And I think what they're seeing now is probably his true colors, because this guy does not have like a very good reputation among these artists. And, just from being working briefly in Hollywood, I could tell you, even the ones with the good reputations are like really kind of manipulative, gaslighty, and horrible. Even the ones with the good reputations and that do a good job. And then imagine, and I'm sure he does a good job too, it's just a dog-eat-dog world there. And I kind of feel like maybe the BTS crowd is just saying, or BTS members, and even probably the chairman Pang is feeling like, did we step into something that we shouldn't have? Because what was very shady, I thought, was that like, it's supposed to be an acquisition, right? But who looked like they were still trying to keep the power or gain the power after getting $1 billion? It seemed like he was positioned, like, Mr. Scooter was trying to position himself to kind of like then have control. They said that they retained Chairman Pang as the chairman of the board, but kind of said he's going to focus on music producing because that was his talent. That's essentially sidelining. There was a different CEO running the HYBE America, and then the sub-labels would have their control, and so, Mr. Scooter's on the board of directors, and I could see, this is just board politics, that there are power moves going on here and there. And I believe they probably went in, HYBE Korea probably went in with, the best of intentions and trust, and then they soon saw what was really going on and how crazy it is over there as it is in Korea. And so, in general, you can't F with Korean people because we've seen it all. We do it to each other here. That's why I think Korean people, when they go outside, if they are good in business, in the sense of like business doing like the tough business, they're really good at it, and they're comfortable in environments that aren't necessarily the most transparent or just, or basically like if you gotta get your hands dirty, Korean people they come in with dirty hands, just in nice gloves. And if you try to mess with Korean people, I would say the difference is that to their own people, they will be kind of like in your face and then also behind the scenes working on something. And then sometimes they'll not even show their face. Whereas in the American style, yes, there is backstabbing, but they kind of like try to, full frontal assault you for intimidation more often. Whereas the Korean style is that sometimes you don't know that somebody is pissed off, that somebody's onto you. And they're trying to create a plausible kind of like chess game where it seems as if their move off of the battlefield is totally legitimate. This is why I think that this comes at a time where a lot of forces came together. I do believe that, yes, I do trust what BTS is saying in terms of their burnout. But at the same time, I feel like it comes at a great time where they made a strategic choice to stop production as BTS. Why? The money's gonna fall down. The money's gonna dry up. And I think that puts people that you want to get rid of in a more vulnerable position. Is it still gonna be worth it for the people that maybe they're having conflicts with on the board in the United States? The stock value has dropped, and the potential income sources have dried up. And depending on the contract, I'm guessing that the deal was made for BTS as a group. Individually, I bet the money doesn't necessarily have to go to the entire umbrella organization that is under the thumb of the board of directors and whoever is manipulating control over that board of directors. Also, there is talk that the military service, the mandatory military service here in Korea, is going to apply to BTS. In April, the National Assembly promised that they're going to pass a bill to exempt BTS because they provide so much to the country's image and also to the economy. Apparently like 0.5% of Korea's GDP comes from BTS and BTS related activity. But that did not pass in April, and it seems like it's going to be an uphill battle that's not going to be won, because usually the only music artists that get exemptions from the mandatory military service are people who do Korean traditional music. And it would be a very controversial precedent to allow a pop musician to get exemptions, because that has created a lot of conflict in the past. They did get an extension, and they are now required to report for military duty if they don't get an exemption by the time they're 30. And the oldest member of the group, Jin, is almost 30, so he would have to go to the military by the end of the year. So in terms of each individual member going to the military and doing their service, and then the guys that are still a little bit younger that don't want to go right now, want to pursue their own projects, this is the perfect opportunity to use that as an excuse if there's something else going on. It could just basically be, we're burned out, we have to pursue our own projects, and we have to leave open the possibility that we have to each go to the military at a separate time. Totally legitimate reason for taking a break right now on the surface. Underneath the surface, I still do think there is probably some sort of thing going on with the American branch. And I just wish, we had somebody on the inside showing us the juicy details, because there is absolutely no way that there was not conflict on the management or the upper levels of that combined organization. There's just absolutely no way that eventually something was going to blow up. Do you know that even Taylor Swift, so after she re-recorded one of her songs, Ryan Reynolds used it in, I guess, producing or starring in a Match.com advertisement, and while it's basically saying like, well, even in hell, there's a match is a match. And so like the devil was like trying to do online dating. And so there was like the girl and the devil, and there was like a dumpster fire, and they were in an alley or something. And I couldn't even see it, but somebody said it, and they zoomed in on it. Basically, there was, one of those kickboard scooters that kids, ride, not the electronic ones. It was fallen over in the alleyway next to the wall, and on the wall there was a graffiti number 6, and the fans were saying like, oh, that represents the 6 albums that a scooters company is holding hostage of Taylor Swift, and then Taylor Swift is going to had re-recorded, or basically she's going to re-record everything if she hasn't done it by now. And to be fair, from Scooter Braun's perspective, they say that she had passed on the offer to acquire the masters. Her dad was on the board of directors, so that they could have done that if they wanted to. So they just decided not to acquire the masters, so it's all on them. But something about that seems like doublespeak to me, but that's what they said, and that's how they defended their position. Just want to let you know, what they say, because they say that there's nothing wrong, and that Taylor is being immature because we should be talking things through. But I just want to read some of what Taylor Swift had publicly posted on her blog about Scooter and the situation. She said that all I could think about was the incessant manipulative bullying I've received at his hands for years. She also said, I feel very strongly that sharing what is happening to me could change the awareness level for other artists, BTS, and potentially help them avoid a similar fate. The message being sent to me is very clear. Basically, be a good little girl and shut up, or you will be punished. This is wrong. Neither of these men had a hand in the writing of those songs. They did nothing to create the relationship I have with my fans. So this is where I'm asking for your help. Why does this sound so similar if you just look a little bit underneath the surface of what BTS is saying? She also threw shade at Scooter's financial situation, which was before HYBE's acquisition of Scooter's company, where they just threw $1 billion at him. She said that it looks like Scooter Braun and his financial backers, 23 Capital, Alex Soros and the Soros family, and the Carlyle Group have seen the latest balance sheets and realized that paying $330 million for my music wasn't exactly a wise choice, and they need money. Now, did these backers, who are basically like venture capitalist firms, demand a profitable or at least a break-even exit out of their investment into Scooter. They want to kind of like hightail it too, and then they found HYBE Entertainment, kind of like a naive, recently flush billionaire from the IPO of HYBE that basically gave about $3 billion to just the CEO, the Chairman Pang. And so did they kind of find a sucker who basically would give $1 billion over to this group and then, have an extra like $600-700 million to play with? So let's go back to the festa and what BTS said, and each individual member kind of said some parting words, and just wanted to give you some of the highlights. Now, Jungkook said that everyone has their own timing. This timing of a break should have come to us earlier, and RM was like, hallelujah to that. So it seems as if these guys had been kind of like grinning and bearing it for a very, very long time. But at the same time, that is an accomplishment in and of itself. I kind of feel, I guess, I also want them to keep going, and I'm glad that they kept going even though it was tough, but I do believe this is kind of a breaking point for them. They need a break. Now, V said that, he wants to do a lot of other things, and he wants to show a different side of himself and whatever is in him musically and personally that is not V. So not just his persona of V, but, Kim Taehyun. And he doesn't want to just spend the time resting and doing nothing. He says that he's going to be active. J-Hope says he wants to thank the fans most, first of all. And he said that it's great that being apart is good because then it helps us be more active together. And I was just like, yeah, this is like when you prune a tree, you kind of cut it all down and you're just like, is there any tree left? But then when it grows back shapelier, bigger, and stronger. And Jimin also said that he always wanted to ask, a lot of fans on a friend level, what does ARMY really mean to you? The BTS ARMY is the name of the fan group. And he says that, he hopes that meaning doesn't get lost because it's something very, very special. It's more than just a fan. And the way that I interpret it is that it's like a group of hope and change and belonging and safety, like for the people who are part of it. Yes, you are fans of the music and the personalities and the dancing and everything, but I kind of feel as if it's a tribe where people feel like they can belong, that they can have hope for the future and be part of a positive change. And I think that's what he's talking about, that it's an aggressive, it's aggressive move. It's an army, it's not like people who are going to be passive about it. And, they're the ones going to be fighting for change in this world. And the biggest thing that RM said that I think shows that there is something a little bit more to the story, because he started to sob and cry when he was saying, I want us to stay together, be on the stage and talk like this without thinking about the rules of the world. He said that's what he really wants. And so you see a lot of these themes about this group wants to kind of operate just out of love and for the music, and then not have to be oppressed by a lot of the things that happen behind the scenes. Because Suga also says that, he's very grateful for what had happened with the group and the experiences and the amazing fans, but he said that there's so much resentment or injustice or unfair things that they had to just put up with, and he said that was really hard. And so the hardest thing about having to put up with bad situations is when you can't even talk about it. More than that, when you feel as if you don't even have the right to think that it's bad. And so this is the kind of mental strain that all these guys have been under, is that they can't even think that they are allowed to complain, let alone complain. So their mouth stays, your mouth can stay silent, and then you can be thinking oh, this sucks. But they kind of they even felt guilty if they thought oh, this sucks. And that's the kind of mental strain that they were under. And I think that was, in terms of the success factor, is that they didn't let their minds go there as much, and so they just kept working together. They just kept servicing the fan, bringing this performance to the world. And Jimin also says like, yeah, I don't know if we can do all this solo stuff because, you know, like I'm a member of a group, you know, like I'm a group person. And so they all understand that, you know, they see how they complement each other as a group, dynamic group. And they were really drinking, because by the end of this, they started looking drunk. And then J-Hope was the first one to kind of, you know, basically be like, oh, I'm so tired from drinking. It was kind of funny. So I do think that they were very, very, very honest about what was going on and reassuring the fans and just asking for a little bit of time. On the other hand, I do think that eventually one of these days they should kind of, you know, come out with it, you know, how this relationship is going, like on the management level. Maybe that's influencing something that's going down on the BTS level, or if everything's hunky-dory and this is like a pure success case for a merger and acquisition or partnership between a Korean entertainment company and a US entertainment company, then they should even talk more about that too and set a roadmap for more of this cross collaboration to happen. But even under the best of circumstances, I know there's like, that's probably like some heated board meetings. What do you guys think? Did you see the music video? Amazing. Did you see the festa? Really heartwarming. And what do you think? You know, would you give like BTS some time to take a break and then come back even better and stronger and more amazing? I am just so looking forward to what BTS can do when they do come back. And I do think they will come back. I doubt that they're going to be able to rest that long, because they're just going to be wanting to kind of, you know, be out there for their fans again. And who knows, maybe it'll happen sooner rather than later. All right, guys, well, leave your comments below and remember to like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.
Tune in next time. Don't forget to subscribe. Find us on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Love you.